Hey guys, if you can hear me, I'm working on getting the stream back up. So I'm not sure if we're here or not yet. Give me a second to try to confirm and save all this stuff. Okay. Yeah, I'm having some issues with all my software right now. Okay. Let's see. Let's get rid of Adobe Photoshop. Let's kill Blender. Okay. So, hey, Lorian, can you confirm that we're up for me? You still watching? Still there. Okay, good. All right, well, I lost where I was at, so we're gonna have to move on. Got some of it, but all right, guys, let that be a lesson to you. Make sure you're saving, especially if you're streaming. You gotta save. Okay. So let's jump back into this now. Is my audio recovered a little bit? I'm just gonna open my reference outside of Photoshop. Hope that it will not crash. Okay. Okay, awesome. Cool. Let's move on. Make sure I'm looking at the right. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this kind of needs to be even towards the top here. I'll try to catch us up as quick as I can. I know we got about an hour left, but I'd love to be further along tonight. Okay, so one of the things I'm seeing is in my reference, these are sort of straight across and not hooking up like this. So we need to make sure we're following these as parallel lines and sort of lining these up here. More like that. This needs to be down a bit more. raise this up a little bit. Okay. It's going to be easy to get lost sort of in some of these ridges as we're getting them in here. So it's really important to pay attention to which line we're working on. So this top one is the one that's actually dipping down once we get past right about here. Cut into the side. And kind of taking that shape. So here I've got extra ridges and all sorts of stuff going on. Definitely don't need, well, I don't know. It's actually hard to tell because of the way this is drawn. All right, I'm gonna pretend that I'm wrong about that, since that's the way we actually started this. So zoom out, zoom back a little bit here. We'll use this one. So still down here. Sorry guys, I know this is confusing right now, but I'm trying to figure out what we're doing with this concept as we go. The beauty of live. If this was a course, it would just look like I was a genius and I thought about this and knew what I was doing and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So right about, I'm looking for visual references here, right about where this sort of top crest is right here, we drop straight down. And a little bit to the left of that is where this is dipping lower. So we need to actually even that out to about there. Okay. Make sure this is all the same level, height-wise. Close. Okay. So that's all going to go in a little bit there. And then from this point, right about to here, we'll drop down a little bit, and all of this needs to be kind of carved in to about here. This little area is going to be raised on the front end, down here as well. Get a little bit of a raised area here. Just going to connect up. That's where we get this little drop. Okay. So, getting close. Looking again for a visual cue, this top ridge right here, if we drop straight down, a little bit to the right of that is going to be the hole or the propeller, or not propeller, but the little fin area is going to be stuck into the side. So I'm going to hold control and let's bury a hole kind of right here. Then right about where the left side of this hole ends, that's where we start angling back up over to here. Okay, so we kind of got that defined a little bit there. Quick, short strokes. Let's get straight lines. And then from there, I want to kind of go sideways here. I might grab smooth stroke and go all the way out to the side. And this is, remember, under the propeller over here. This ridge is going to go around and curl back up like that. So we're just using these as kind of guidelines to let us know what's happening at each of these levels. Okay. Rotate a little bit down here, grab a big brush, and we just really want to add that clay in. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's doing some weird things there. So right now we're being careful to beef up these sections and try not to touch the edges as much as we can so we don't lose any of these sort of little creases we're getting from these overlapping layers. Got a little bit of a dip happening behind right about here. It's actually going all the way back to here. So that's probably what was throwing me off about This little hook right here. We had two of them happening, where there should have just been one. Okay. This needs to have a bit more of a rounded top here. Okay. So let's pull this out a little bit over here. Lauren's asks, when you use those brushes for modeling, do they always apply their effects directly perpendicularly, or do they respect the angle of your application? So it's based on a little bit on the selection you have here for the sculpt plane. And so area plane is going to be the default, and that's going to basically just project based on the view that you have here. I think view plane is actually doing what I was just saying. Area plane might do what you're talking about, or it projects on the area, the surface area, and then X, Y, and Z will constrain that to those axes. So if I hit Z plane and I'm sculpting from the side, it's still only going to affect up and down. So yeah, that's how that works. Now, unfortunately, it's not going to show you that rotation. But if you select area plane, it should be doing what you're trying to say, where it's going to follow the contour of the stroke is going to follow the contour of the surface normals of the polygons here. And so when I say surface normals, let me save before I do this because I don't want to. I'm actually going to do it to this object because this has so many polygons that trying to show you surface normals on this is going to be killer for my system. So if we jump into this subsurf object right here, if you scroll down to the bottom while you're in edit mode, you can see normals. And if you check off any of these boxes, this is going to be vertex normals, these are edge normals, and these are face normals. And then you can change the size right here. So this will show you the these normals are all going to be perpendicular to the surface of each of these faces. And so that will show you sort of the surface normal of each polygon. That is going to be how Blender determines, using that area selection that we were just talking about, how to rotate the stroke around the mesh. So if I'm from the side view and I start painting up here, it's still going to flatten from the top, supposedly. You know, it still thinks I'm coming from the side, so it's still going to do a little bit from the side, but it tries to follow the contour a little bit better. I don't think it does it like ZBrush does it, but it does a decent job. So to get any more detail than this, we're probably going to have to increase the dynamic topology to a lower resolution, or actually a higher resolution in this case. So I'm going to hold off on that for right now, until we get everything kind of a little bit more leveled off as far as these sides go. Okay. So I'm rotating into the top view to just kind of check the bumps, make sure we're not getting anything too crazy going on. Looking decent. We need a bit more down here on the bottom. So zoomed out now so we can add bigger strokes of clay. Okay. It's looking good. Okay. Let's jump back up to the front and kind of refine this little area. So we lost some of this. If you're painting and you're going over one area a bunch and you're not noticing a whole lot happening, if you check off this accumulate button right here, it'll constantly add more and more and more as you just stay in one area. So before too long, you can build up a whole lot of clay. I don't like to use that a whole lot because I feel like it's harder to control what I'm doing. But if you like it, it's an option. And I'm sure there's a good use for it in some of the applications as you're working on stuff. Okay. So I'm looking at, there's a section down here towards the bottom, and as we get further down, of course, these all need to be farther out than the areas above. So we need to add more clay so that it's going to be level. And when I say further out, I mean from the side, just in terms of how this is bumping. So yeah, so all of this down here is going to get its own little addition. Okay, so let's do the pinch again. Looks like before we do that, there's actually a piece further down. slightly more raised than the surrounding areas. I want to kind of amplify that crease. Just like that. What's good once you kind of get in here and start doing smaller details like this is once you crease, you can kind of go along the side wall of 2 layers and flatten the side wall, and that will kind of further enhance the sort of man-made feel and the hard surface aspect of what you're working on. Just makes it feel like it's carved in there a little more. Using a very light touch. Okay. So yeah, just this area compared to the rest of this, you can see how tight those lines are getting there and kind of where we need to be moving. So I'm looking around to make sure we don't have any other major things to tweak here. I do want to go back and kind of pull down this side so it's got that steeper angle that we were doing before we crashed. So I'm going to save again. And we got our flatten here. Go from sort of a 45-degree angle down and then just kind of flatten that down. It's easy to go too far with this, so you want to go slow and go soft. And as you're nearing that right angle, you can zoom in a little more and get a little bit softer with your strokes, a little bit more deliberate. I'm going to crease that edge up, just flatten around the outside just a little bit. If we're missing some clay, it's too rounded off, all we have to do is pull up clay strips. Just really gently add some of that layer back, stack some clay up, and then we do a quick smooth, and then again, just flatten really gently. Yeah, just like that. And flatten. I want to flatten more towards the top than you do the bottom because we're going to undo all the stuff we just did, adding that back if we don't. So flatten a little bit, rotate around and check. Make sure you're not going overboard. Trick is moving around. Okay. So I think for now, that's a decent place to be. Might lower this down to, or increase this actually. Try something like 80. That's gonna enable us to dynamically add a few more polygons as we paint this in here. And then we can just very gently kind of crease this edge, and that's going to bevel as we flatten this edge down a little bit. It's going to bevel that for us. So Lauren's asking, does Blender provide a way that you could actually tell the model as we're kind of creating this, exactly what angle to slant this edge at. And it actually does. There's not a good way to do this while you're sculpting, but if you're modeling, there's actually a really cool trick that you can do. So let me switch out of sculpt mode really quick and show you how that works. So I'm going to save. Let's jump to a new layer. And let's add a cube here. Jump into edit mode. And let's just select this face. And let's say I want to rotate this face by a certain angle. So we'll jump into a side view. So I want to rotate this. If you look down the lower left-hand corner down here, as I rotate, you'll see that switches to a number. You can see those degrees there. You can actually change this if you go into your property settings over here. Under angle for the units, you can change this from degrees to radians if you want to try something different, but typically it's on degrees. Length you can also change. So if you want to use metric or imperial, you've got those options here. None will use blender, what are called blender units or BUs. And so when you look in the properties here for XYZ and then scale, when you're looking here for these coordinates, those are in blender units until you switch to imperial for dimensions or metric here. Those are in meters. And I'm in the US, so I don't typically use metric. I typically stick with blender units, and then I just decide on a scale. So one blender unit is a foot or whatever it is in your country, and or an inch, or it just depends on the scene that you're working on. Anyways, so jump into the side view, and if you want to rotate this by a certain number of degrees, you would just hit R for rotate, and then you might type in 45 on your numerical keypad, and you'll see in the lower left-hand corner now, there's a little bracket that says what you're typing in, and it says 45 degrees. So now if you are trying to move your mouse around, it's not going to move until you left-click to accept, or hit enter, or hit escape to cancel. So escape will cancel, R45, enter will enter a specific rotation there. So if you're trying to do any mechanical modeling and you need a very specific degrees, set of degrees, you can do that. Of course, in object mode, you can type degrees in right here under your boxes. So there's that. So hope that was helpful. Now I'm saving every 5 seconds because I'm terrified something's going to happen. Okay, let's keep going. I like to hide almost everything when I'm working on stuff in the 3D viewport. If you know keyboard shortcuts, that's definitely doable. And I keep this up quite a bit, but T, as in transform on your keyboard, will hide and unhide the left menu or the tools palette. And then N on the keyboard, as in numbers, will open this properties panel on the right side. And so those two are the only two that really pop up in the 3D viewport like this. You can also left click on that plus sign or drag this out with your mouse to open or close that. I think you can actually hit like, there's a button you can hit. I don't remember what it is on the keyboard, but there's a way to pop it up, or there used to be a way to pop up your properties panel as a floating window, but they may not allow you to do that anymore. Yeah, that's just telling me sculpt mode. Okay. Anyways, I'll get back to this. Gonna pull this up so you guys can at least look at this reference if you need it and see what I'm seeing. Okay. we were working on this right here. And there we go. So if you need to bevel something like you would in while you're modeling, this is how you would do it in sculpt mode. Get flatten tool and just kind of pick an angle and then rotate around, and as long as you keep a consistent sort of angle as you're going around the edge, you should be good to go. And the hardest part is keeping a consistent width, but that's just going to take practice. So I want this to be a little bit more on the outside over here. So I'm going to follow this outside line a little bit more until we join up down here. Just kind of fade that in to the edge we already had going. Kind of see that? There we go. So we got a nice little rounded chamfer there. Okay. Now, looking at this section, we definitely need to work on this. So bring this back up, and this needs to come down. Kind of like this. And then over here, this curves up a little bit like this. Kind of smooth this out back here. Okay, so kind of falling off here, and there's not really a defined angle. So again, we need to make this ledge sort of come out of the mountain side a little bit, if you know what I'm saying. Flatten this down so we've got a bit of a wider path as we're sloping down here towards the bottom. Just like that. And this actually needs to kind of level off down here. So start kind of digging in back towards the side over here to where this will come down, and yeah, this needs to be sort of at a height that is level across here. It's getting there. It's pretty close. Since we're kind of running out of room to expand down here towards the bottom, we're going to expand a little bit with clay strips here as we're carving into the side over here, because we have more room to do it into the pipe here. That will give us more to flatten out. Over here. So we'll flatten out the top, flatten out the very side right here, which will give us a harder edge. If we're not getting what we want still, we can either zoom in and dig in more with the clay strips with a tighter resolution here, or we can use crease to drop in a bit more of a line here, which is a lot faster in this case. Okay, so we get that in there, smooth a little bit of this out. Don't want it super sharp yet. We'll take our time. Okay, so there we go. It's more like the width that we have up here. And we definitely want to keep this consistent as we go up. So right here, we'll add some clay strips. Just want to pull this out a tiny bit here. Okay, and then there's a little bit of a room to carve in right there. We can flatten this now on the sidewall. Get this all to the same sort of depth here, so there's not any big bumps or problems going on. And then we can kind of flatten this. Now I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. It's probably a little much, but we will play with this crease a little bit. Okay. I'm actually not liking how this is joining up right now. We need to actually bring this down here. So I'm gonna start right about here and go this way and join back up. We're gonna cut across right here. Okay, so we can pinch this a little bit, tighten this up. And let's play. Can't pick a brush I want. Okay, I'm gonna even this back out. So this is why we haven't got in and started doing details yet, because we're still running into problems where we've thought that we got everything ironed out, and then we need to change a major line and stuff like that. So once we're done kind of screwing around with this sort of stuff, then it'll be time to zoom in even further, lower the resolution, and start doing these really tight lines. Let's crease this up on this edge. See how quickly that's pulling that sidewall over, giving us kind of what we want there. Okay, let's take this up to about 100. And as you smooth, you're going to see the resolution increase a bit here. So we can tell from this top angle, there's not enough clay because it's swooping in here. It needs to be bulging out. So we need to fatten this area back up. Okay, that's better. Okay, too much time left, so let's work on getting this hole in here just as a sort of final thing tonight. So I can dig in with the clay strips to do this, or I can use inflate and I can deflate here, which will push this in for me. So that can be a little easier to use depending on what you need. Get the hole in here and make sure you're moving the brush around as you do this. Smooth. And so getting a hole like that is not that hard to do. For the crease around the outside, you can start with an inflate to get a little bit of a lip there. And if you want, you can increase this to something like 150. And then start here and just go around the outside. And the trick is to do this in layers. So you're building this up and not trying to do it all in one stroke. So you got a little bit of that happening. To define the outside edge, you can crease this. And if you need to, you can turn on smooth stroke, and this will help you maintain a pretty even line. So do that. You can pinch that once you've got that in a good place. That will bring those two sides closer together for you, so it's a little bit more defined. If you got any unevenness, you can zoom in and kind of fix that. It's easier to move big areas around when you're zoomed out, so it's something helpful to remember. But once you got that sort of in there, you might want another section sort of mirroring what's going on there. So you can bring this back out a little bit. Just pulling out and smoothing until that's pretty even. And then we do the same process. We basically just crease around the edges. Might make a couple of passes. Pinch. Turn off smooth stroke. And from a distance, you can see kind of what that looks like. And when we add the propeller or the, I don't know what this is, prop, fin, whatever it is, we add this into the side for steering, and we can just mirror that over, and we got two of them, and there we go. We do the same thing on the outside edges for any of these little ridges. Now these don't need to really be pinched up that much because we're going to round these off quite a bit, but a little bit can help even up that inconsistent edge and just further define how this is supposed to look, you know. So just a little bit like this as we go. The same thing can help around here. Turn this up a little bit, pull out. You can see as we turn this up, kind of what that's doing and how easy it is to take these fatter areas that have creases and just kind of bring them together on the edges. And even areas where it doesn't really seem like you have a ridge, you can add a ridge pretty quickly by using this crease tool. So it's good to keep consistent strokes as you go. You don't want to have a bunch of random misaligned creases as you're kind of moving around your model. So I would highly recommend using smooth stroke on this if you're not really used to using this tool. I practice drawing a lot in Photoshop, so I'm pretty good at doing straight lines when I need to, but most of the time I still use it. So anyways, it's probably not the final version of where we'll leave this, but it's a good quick example of how to get these creases sort of in place. So you can see how much more polished that looks compared to over here where we don't really have that happening yet. It's also good to kind of bring these edges together over here for the pipe fitting for the stem. There we go. Tighten that up a little bit. And this can be kind of fun and addicting once you get started creasing things up. It can be easy to spend way too much time getting in here and playing with this. But it's a quick way to tighten up your sort of sketchy looking sculpt here. Get it in a more presentable place. Definitely. All right, so you can imagine this sort of being textured with that sepia light material, something like this. It's going to be lit a little bit more dimly and moody than this, but yeah, so this is kind of what we're going for. And I think the last thing I'm going to do tonight is kind of line the stem back up with this pipe. So we'll switch back into object mode, and let's jump into edit mode and move this around. Select everything. I'm going to assume we're kind of done with this side of it. May have some more tweaks, but it's not going to take too long to fix something that we do right now. So just kind of move this into place. Just want to get it close. Looks decent for now. And there we go. Kind of looks like a whale right now, but that is the beginning of our submarine. So tonight, we didn't get as far as I was thinking we would. I may work a little bit more on this tomorrow during the day. Let's see how busy I am. And then tomorrow night, we are going to continue working on this. And whatever I don't finish tomorrow, I'll wrap up and I'll share with you guys over the weekend or next week. And next week, switch back over real quick to the webcam. Next week, Lorian has requested that we do a live stream for beginners. So we're going to take a break from the sort of intermediate to advanced workflow for the 3D illustration that we're working on. And I'm going to do a solid 3 days just on introduction to Blender. So if you're interested in learning how to get around the interface, some keyboard shortcuts, any questions you guys have along the way, we'll pop in and I'll answer those. And then the other 2 streams that week will be devoted to building out a basic scene, and we'll try to build out an entire scene quickly, texture it up fast and loose, and then even do a little bit of animation. So it's going to be a good stream if you want a really good quick overview of the entire thing in about 6 hours over the course of 3 days. Then tune in and it'll be good. So in the meantime, if you haven't checked out theorangeguild.com, definitely check that out. That's what this is all for. And that's where all the courses are, and you can pop in, ask us questions 24/7, and we are available. So Lori says thank you, and I say you're welcome, and hope that you guys have an awesome night. I will be hanging out working, and I will see you guys tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central. So until then, happy blending and have a good evening.